Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out today to this event on the Prairies. I come to you today from Treaty 6 territory from my family farm. It's the ancestral and territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota, Sioux, as well as the Métis and Inuit. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. I look forward to seeing all of the contestants tonight and answering questions relevant to our area.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sai, originally from Winnipeg. Winnipeg sits on Treaty 1 territory, which is home to the Ojibwe, Cree, as well as the Manitoba Métis Foundation. We want to give thanks to all of those Indigenous peoples whose home we are currently on. So how today is going to go, we're actually going to start with some opening statements. So we have 1 minute for each candidate to present. Courtney was not able to make it today, and she gave us a statement to read. She's actually an emergency room physician in the north, and she was called to work in the emergency room tonight, and there was no ability to get her replacement. So Dr. Howard is unable to join this debate as she is in the emergency room tonight. It's not possible to find a replacement for her. Emergency room physicians are hard to find in rural areas. Best of luck to all the candidates for this debate. So with that, we'll start with our opening statement from Naomi Paul.
Thank you very much, and I'm coming to you from the traditional territories of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat. My name is Naomi. It's good to see some familiar names and some new people. I'm a lawyer, I'm an international affairs professional, and I'm a 2019 candidate and a former international affairs critic for the Green Party. My tie to the Prairies is that my brother, until very recently, was a roughneck out on the oil rigs. And so when I think about the Prairies and I think about the Green Party, I know that he and his crew are looking for jobs. They want to know that we care. They want to know that we have the best plan for them. That's our way to be able to make a breakthrough. I'm looking forward to talking with you more about this tonight and the ways in which I believe that we can convene and build good things together.
15 seconds.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were stopping me to say that my time was up.
Next, we have Andrew.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew West. I am a 4-time Green Party candidate. I've ran 3 times provincially for the Green Party of Ontario, once federally for the Green Party of Canada. I've been the Attorney General critic of the Green Party of Ontario since 2015. I'm a small business owner. I have my own law office in Ottawa. I'm an insider to the Green Party. I'm not an outsider. I have been with the party for many, many years. And it's from being a Green Party member for so long, it's helped me shape my vision for the party. And that vision is to get us elected. I've had 4 nights where I've sat on the sidelines and been miserable because, like so many other candidates, I knew I was the best candidate, but still wasn't able to win. That's what this leadership contest should be about. Finding the best person who will get us elected and win seats. Thank you.
Next up, we have Miriam to give her speech.
Hello, everyone. I am in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, unceded Mohawk territory. It's a pleasure for me to participate in tonight's Prairies Town Hall. I am 32. I'm a socialist. I immigrated to Canada from Syria with my family in '93. The past 7 years, I've been working as an immigration lawyer, specializing in refugee claims from the Middle East. So I've represented stateless Palestinians, Yemenis, and Syrians, also a lot of queer folks. Last fall, I joined the Green Party of Canada and ran during the last federal campaign. Today, it seems so far ago because of everything that has happened since. In Canada, our year started with the Wet'suwet'en crisis, then there was the COVID-19 crisis. Everywhere on the planet, we have been in a state of shock. And I'm running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada because I will be able to inspire and attract the biggest block of voters to join our movement. The millennials and the Gen Zs will have the power to change the outcome of the next elections, and the Greens need to be stronger and more influential in Ottawa. It's a question of survival for my generation and the next ones.
Next up, we have David.
Thanks very much, Sai, and welcome everybody. It's really great to see the familiar faces. Thank you to the organizers, Naomi and Sai and everybody else who helped pull this together. It's great to be among prairie folk and others. I was born in Edmonton. I have family in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and it's great to be back with everyone. I'm coming to you from Saanich, British Columbia, in the southwest corner of Vancouver Island, the traditional territories of the Esquimalt, the Wisaniq, the Sauk, the Secwepemc, and the Songhees First Nations. And this is near and dear to my heart because I went into law very concerned about the treatment of Indigenous people throughout our history. That'll be hopefully one of the themes we discuss today. What I offer is a leadership candidate who's actually able to win his seat in the next election, somebody who's traveled across the country campaigning for Greens from coast to coast, and somebody who can do it in perfect French and English. I'm a cooperator, I'm a listener, I'm a builder, and I'm a uniter. And I really look forward to this debate with these fantastic candidates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Glenn.
Thanks very much. We're at one of the most seminal points in our history. As a species and as Canadians, we're at an intersection where our choice is either to sit back and watch the continued degradation of our planet, the destruction of ecosystems, or to fully embrace a circular economy free of waste, free of pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, to restore and return and repatriate our resources, recover our plastics from used plastics, make our aluminum out of recovered aluminum rather than mining bauxite and exploiting people around the world, restoring jobs and prosperity, and to put this passionate, compelling vision of a Canada that is just beyond our grasp right now, and the reach to grab it is the Green Party of Canada. I've set up and run needle exchange programs. I built 9 Circles and Village Clinic, one of the largest urban health centers. In Quebec, I organized student strikes to stop tuition increases. I've been a cabinet minister in Ontario. I got elected in downtown Toronto with the largest pluralities. And as a young gay man, I bootstrapped myself against great opposition to be the first out gay elected man of a major city in the world. I've been an activist and a politician and I'm a business owner, and I offer myself up as a candidate for leader of our party. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Judy.
Hi, thank you. And thank everybody for coming tonight. I'm coming to you from Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I live in a little tiny town called Clements Fort. I've lived in both rural and urban. I spent about 7 years through junior high in Winnipeg. My nieces were born there and they're both Métis. And I've spent many years in Alberta as well, actually working with my software consulting firm in oilfield companies in Alberta. I have a varied background. I'm a veteran. I've served with the Canadian Forces as an airframe technician. I have an undergrad and a master's degree in computer science, and my specialty is about team building. It's in communities that are not necessarily well-versed in team building. So I'm a unifier. And that's one of the things that we need. Now, part of what we do within the leadership contest is to look at different points of view, but ultimately we need to all come together and work together, empowering membership on the ground in order to raise the profile of Greens across Canada so that we get more MPs in Ottawa. Thank you.
Next up, we have Amita.
Thank you. I am speaking with you all today from the unceded territory of the Sliammon First Nation, which is, for me, on Laskiti Island in the coast of British Columbia. I'm really excited to be running and presenting a collective vision for the party that focuses on justice, work in equity and decolonization, credibility, making sure we have a true foundation in science, and readiness so that we are prepared for what the future holds, both as a party and as a country. And in this era of crises, I believe it's the perfect time to have a scientist as a leader, especially one with lived experience in trauma and climate disaster. Perhaps an astrophysicist is perfect to present a hopeful, dynamic vision of the future. The prairies have been often, if not always, ignored by Ottawa. And I believe that we need a leader that can communicate and connect with people in all regions, not just vote-rich areas, making sure that all voices are heard. And that's something I have a lot of experience doing. And I look forward to this conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Dimitri.
Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you this evening from a few blocks from where Merriam is situated, I believe, in Old Montreal, the unceded lands of the Ganingahaga Nation, the custodian of these lands, which we as a country have, whose primordial importance we have failed to respect. You know, I'm a lawyer, journalist, and activist. I've had a lot of opportunity in this race to talk about my background. I'd like to talk about one thing in particular this evening. It's what caused me to become a Green in 2007. That's the first political party I ever joined. It is the party that defines my core values. I read the fourth report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2007. I read the book, Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, and realized that the narratives we hear every day are not truly representing to us what's happening. And I experienced firsthand as a class actions lawyer the financial crisis. The crisis we confronted then has only gotten worse. This is a time for transformational change. And any candidate who's going to lead this party has to be a candidate who is equipped to deal with the ferocious resistance of the corporate sector to a transformational agenda. I believe I'm that candidate, and I look forward to a discussion tonight with all of these extraordinarily qualified candidates.
Thank you so much, all of you, and I look forward to hearing more as we get into our questions. We do have some pre-selected questions, which mainly came through from people being able to submit ahead of the event. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds, and there will be a maximum of 3 rebuttals total for the entire town hall. First question, which each of you will answer. How would you propose support in prairie ridings where Greens have struggled?
If I could just jump in there for a second, Naomi, before the candidates speak. I should have said this at the beginning, but I wanted to let everyone know that this webinar, as all the GPC events, you need to abide by the Members Code of Conduct and our safe space policy. So we are not going to be tolerating any hateful or abusive language in the chat. Obviously, there were already some disruptive people who've now been removed. If you have any concerns about another attendee, if you're seeing anything, please feel free to send a private message to GPC support. This is meant to be a welcoming and inclusive environment, and we aren't going to let people harass our candidates. Thanks. Back to you, Naomi.
And are we, Vicky, are we still going with the same random order that the introductions went in?
You can pick and choose for the order as you like, up to you.
Okay, Naomi, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you feel prepared to do that?
If you could kindly repeat it.
How would you propose to establish support in prairie ridings where Greens have struggled?
Thank you. And just to say, as the Jewish person and the Black person on this call, that whoever those people are that put those comments there, I'm not going to be silenced. You know, come find me. You know, I'm just absolutely outraged that those are there, and I just will not be silenced. Okay, I am here. I'm here, and I will also say I expect other people to lift up their voice, because it's not the first time in the race that people have called me those things, and there's been a lot of deafening silence. Okay, in terms of support to the Prairies for the Green Party, it's yes, it's an important theme. It's something that I believe we can do fairly easily if we combine the strength of the Green Party at various levels. We have to understand that we are a startup that is going to still require a lot of elbow grease, and that we're stronger when we work together and build our joint capacity. So one really exciting example, and I know my time is short, that is being explored in Ontario, for instance, and I talked with Saskatchewan Greens about this recently when we had our call, was that we have a regional collaboration. And it's being led by one of the members of our team, two of the members of our team actually. And what it does is it allows regions of EDAs to support each other by sharing knowledge, by sharing capacity, by sharing resources, so that they're not alone and they can build quickly and continue to stay mobilized and organized between elections. I would also like to point out briefly, and I know I used some of my time. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I'll save it.
And next, Andrew, your response for establishing support in prairie ridings where Greens have struggled.
So first, I just want to say that, yes, I am speaking up. The language that was in the chat is unacceptable, regardless of who you think you are, and regardless of who you think you're speaking with. There's just absolutely no place for that anywhere. So that being said, I think the best way to build up our riding associations is to have stronger EDAs. Now, other leadership contestants are also going to say that, but I come from a place of experience. I have sat on multiple EDAs. I've been the president of a riding association for 2 years. I know the struggle, especially smaller EDAs experience. And I've gone to staff of the GPC and I said, look, we need a day that we can learn G-Vote. We need a day where we can learn how to mobilize volunteers. We need a day where we can learn how to fundraise. And they want to help. I know they want to help, but there's just this disconnect between the ridings and the head office. And we need to fix that disconnect. And that's a goal that I will have as leader. I think that I can appeal to the prairie provinces. I don't think that if we go too far left, that we're going to have a votability in the prairie provinces. If you look at in 2006, Alberta got 6.5% of the Green Party vote. That was the highest province in the country for the Green Party vote. There's opportunities there. We just have to tap into it and have a relatable leader that can relate to these candidates or these ridings and get them out to vote for the Green Party. See them as a viable option.
Thank you, Andrew. And next, Miriam, how would you establish support for prairie ridings where Greens have struggled?
Thank you, Vicky, for removing these people, and it shows that the Green Party of Canada has zero tolerance for unacceptable behavior and comments. So now concerning the answer to the question, this comes down to two things: decentralizing the party and re-centralizing locally, and being clear about what we stand for. There are progressive pockets in the prairies. There's Edmonton, Strathcona, there's parts of Winnipeg, there's parts of Saskatoon, and it is the volunteers and teams on the ground that are the ones that understand where these pockets are and what the local issues are. The Prairies also have a long history of supporting the NDP because of their strong support for the labor movement and workers' rights. The Greens scare a lot of people because they have an image of us as anti-worker and unions, which is completely untrue. And if we are able to communicate with the Green New Deal that workers will actually have a better quality, sustainable work for the same wages and great working conditions, and we will be able to win over the prairies. And we need to talk about general green federal job guarantees and a just transition, and we'll have them on board. Finally, we need to make sure that the Indigenous communities are at the heart of the Green New Deal also, and they have the knowledge to protect and rehabilitate the land. We also need to give Indigenous communities that rely on fossil fuel industry similar support with a UBI and a guaranteed jobs in the communities.
Thank you. And next, David, do you need the question repeated?
No, thank you. And I'll start off as well by saying to Naomi and to all the other people in this race, I think we stand in solidarity for the Green values around diversity and speaking out against the kind of hateful speech we saw in the chat box. So I feel very deeply about that as well. So to the question of what we should do to build up EDAs, the way I see it is two levels. One is from the leadership. The leader personally has to be involved in empowering the EDAs. My plan, if I'm elected as leader, is to cross the country in an EV, recruiting candidates, recruiting volunteers that represent the full diversity of Canada. I'm a real believer of on-the-ground campaigning. Like Andrew, I've served as CEO of riding associations across Canada for riding associations, and I know how it works on the ground. We need to recruit volunteers and inspire our volunteers and recruit strong Indigenous, people of color, Black people to run for us and represent the Green Party. Secondly, if we have a strong grassroots organization, we can transform the party. I believe that we have so much talent in our volunteer base, but we're not empowering it and we're not using it to our best advantage. The concept of working across regions, Naomi Hunter and I crossed Saskatchewan, went to Winnipeg, created allies there. And I hope all the folks in Manitoba and Alberta will help Naomi and the Saskatchewan Greens in the next provincial elections. That's how we build together.
Perfect time at the end there. And Glenn.
Thanks very much. I just want to start off by saying I stand with Annemie and with Miriam. Those were disgusting comments. Lots of us who have faced death threats and attempts on our lives for who we are know that when these things happen, there's more of us and we're winning and we're staring them down and people get more extreme and it's scary and no one should have to put up with that crap. So let's just all stand together against this nonsense and this horrible, horrible behavior by people. We have to start winning. I've proposed an approach. I've gotten elected mayor of a city as an out gay man when there were really not, and really almost no out gay elected people. When I started in politics, I've gotten elected by large pluralities, the largest in Toronto Centre, and I know a little bit about political organizing. We got double-digit votes in 49 seats. I've been looking at the numbers very quickly, and I think we have to reinforce and strengthen every EDA in the country and build out and increase the resources. But we really need to focus on, I think, 50 seats to get a breakthrough. That's been a pattern, it's something used in municipal politics. There are 50 seats that I think that we can win, but we should nominate our candidates right away. If I am elected leader, I will spend the first year or two not running for parliament, but focusing on those 50 seats, but supporting all EDAs, but really focusing, raising the profile, looking at our candidate who's nominated as a shadow MP who's in the riding while the actual MP is in Ottawa, building up our technology base, raising money so that by the time the next election comes around, we have 50 seats that are as close to the win column as possible. And also mobilizing ourselves as an activist movement. Thanks. Is that time? Thank you.
Yes. And next, Judy.
Thank you. I also want to raise my voice in support for both Miriam and Annemie. Absolutely unacceptable, and we have to be in solidarity with you across the board with this. That cannot be accepted in future. For the Prairies, what I'd like to see is perhaps some regional organization. When you don't have a large numbers of people in each of the EDAs, it helps to structure regionally. We could be focusing on specific local issues, which shows relevance in each province and not just in the Prairie, but and actually take those back to the party and give them national perspective and really explore that. The grassroots support that we've been proposing all across Canada will be helping in the Prairies as well, where we are growing the vote, getting out into the underrepresented communities and building the leadership from within. We need to be looking at having fun while we're doing this, making the party fun so that brings people to us. You know, if we're all sitting around at meetings, people don't want to hang around because that's boring. There's a lot of fun work to be done. I mean, I don't have to tell Naomi that. She's like the queen of fun. She's awesome. So we can be learning from each other about how to do some of these things. And but I really like the idea of looking at some of the regional issues, because not us and other provinces may not know what some of the issues are in each of the provinces, and it's a way to be communicating within the party as well. Thank you.
Perfect timing. And Amita.
Thank you. And I'm going to start off by talking about this as well. I hope you can feel it, Annemie and Miriam. I'm sending you love through the wires if possible. But there's a larger discussion here. For those of us with intersectional identities, this isn't easy. And those of us that are carrying trauma, this is life. And this leadership race has been full of hate. And if you aren't seeing that, take a moment to see that it is. I'm now going to answer the question. I think communicating to everyone in the country is what is really necessary here. We need to have a cohesive national messaging strategy that is informed by dialogue with the regions so that we're not alienating anybody at all. And I noticed this even in my riding that I was running in. We had a hard time communicating national policy. We need to support also regional messaging development and grassroots outreach. We need to become the local leaders and live the vision, walk the walk, so that we have trustworthy and hardworking community green leaders that will get elected and can get elected absolutely anywhere. And we need to also support every region and every EDA in having strong regional outreach that is done in a really safe way to the communities that they need to learn to reach. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dimitri?
The appalling commentary that appeared in the chat can't be condemned in words. It is beyond appalling. And I agree entirely with the observation of David Kattenberg in the chat group that racists pollute honest debate. But we as Greens are going to rise above that and stand in solidarity and maintain a dignified and respectful level of debate. And I'm honored to be in a leadership race with candidates who are determined to do that, despite these types of inequities and really quite shocking commentary. What just happened, I think, demonstrates the immensity of the challenge before us. We are living in a moment of transformational change. There's a great deal of anger in our society, sometimes resulting in the kind of extraordinary hateful comment that we saw this evening. I think it's important to remember that the Prairies is the region from which the CCF emerged, a very progressive movement. And let's recall that there is a profound need not only to deal with the climate emergency, but also to deal with the crisis of extreme inequality in our society and with systemic racism within our society. And I think that what we should be looking for is a platform of transformational change going beyond the centrist orientation that the party has tended to pursue in the past. So I think we should be talking very seriously about the elimination of poverty, about a reclamation jobs boom in the Prairies where workers are so rightly concerned about their future and a transition to a renewable energy economy. We need transformational change, and I think that all of us should be focusing on that.
And time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I do very much apologize that they had got those questions had gone so far up that I had to scroll up, and I really apologize that this happened while you were here in the Prairies. Sai, can you take the next question?
Yes. So once again, I'm sorry for what happened. I want to thank you for all of your statements that you gave to us tonight. So tonight we have a question from Janine Gibson from Manitoba. So the question is, how are we going to attract national support from some of our local environmental issues that we have here in Manitoba, specifically the CanWest sands mining that's destroying a local reservoir here in Manitoba? And first, we're going to start with Enemy.
Thank you. It's important to say that the Green Party of Canada does not have a zero tolerance policy on racism and other forms of discrimination. There are public comments available now online, public, and in private chats that are racist, that are anti-Semitic. And I have been subject to this personally for weeks. You know, and I have not heard anything from the Green Party about it. I have not heard anything from the other candidates about it either. And everyone has seen these comments because everybody visits these groups. So if we mean what we say, then I would like to see some actual reflection of that, and I have not. And this is perhaps the last straw. I understand that people can bomb these groups, but that being said, this is a reflection of things that are publicly available right now. And I apologize to the organizers of this event because I know that the question is about Manitoba. I know that there are very important issues that we need to talk about in terms of our growth out in the prairies, about our plans for the people and the workers out in the prairies who really need to really need a solution for their future. And so I hope to be able to compose myself enough to deal with that. But this is just sheer hypocrisy that I'm hearing. And I am going to call it out because, as I said, I am not going to be silenced anymore.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for your comments. So Andrew, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Yes, so here in Manitoba, this is a question from Janine. How would you attract national issues, national support for local issues like the Can West Sands mine that is destroying the local water infrastructure here?
I think the Green Party has success. The Green Party does have success when we focus on local issues. Here in Ontario, that's one of the ways that Mike Schreiner got elected in Guelph, was by focusing on the water issue in the area. So focusing on local issues is very important to make those connections that we need to make in the ridings to build up support. So I would suggest having more connection with the ridings. And one idea, I know the federal council has local representatives or regional representatives, but it's worth looking into, maybe expanding that, maybe actually having, I'm not saying we do this, I'm just saying that this is something to consider. A couple more deputy leaders focused on different regions so that they can coordinate with the central party, with the leader of these local issues so that they can be addressed on a national spotlight. And that requires building these strong DDAs, which means having our contestants nominated very early into the process so they can start building up relations, so we can have strong EDAs that are walking in between elections rather than starting to run when an election comes. It's very important that we have these connections with EDAs on these local issues and have that feedback. When I was a candidate, there were times that I wouldn't get talking points about what to say until 2 or 3 weeks into the election. So there's this real disconnect between what's happening on the ground and what's happening in the central office, and we need to fix that. And that's a great way to do it, is to have these more regional people finding out what the issues are on the ground in the ridings, because I said, it's these issues that we can win on.
I think we're right out of time. So I think we're going to go next to Miriam.
Okay, climate change is a global issue and requires a global solution and global solutions. I think that as a spokesperson for the party, the leader has a responsibility to raise and represent all Green Party of Canada members' issue. However, I think that the grassroots have the biggest role to play here. This year, during the Wet'suwet'en protest, we saw the grassroots mobilize from coast to coast to coast. If everyone did their part, the rail disruptions were extremely effective. We need to support community action and non-violent direct action.
Well, thank you so much, Miriam. Next, we're going to go to David. Would you like me to repeat the question one more time?
No, thank you. That's fine. I'd like to start by really acknowledging what Naomi said again, is we have an opportunity as candidates on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. BC time, 1 p.m. Eastern, to really come together on this issue that Naomi's raised. I think she's right to raise it. And anybody who comes onto that call, let's figure out how we provide better support for each other. I think it's a critical issue, and this is the time to take action. So I really want to acknowledge what you're saying, Naomi, and I respect it very much, and hope that on Sunday morning we can put together a bit of an action plan. On the question, I do think we need to call out when these environmental disasters are happening, and we need to do it in a way that shows the way forward, a positive, strong message of where we're having success. So we need to name the problem that we see, and then show the pathway forward with a positive, strong, coherent message. That's how I'd approach this issue as a leader. I realize that's a short answer to a very complicated question. It's about positive messaging on where we need to go, how we make the transition. Thank you. I'm wondering if Sai has been cut off.
Yeah, it looks like he's having a few technical difficulties there. So Naomi, perhaps you can take over inviting the candidate to speak for this one.
Glenn, did you need the question repeated?
No, no. So I think one of the things that we don't do well enough yet is really mobilizing with allies and community groups. Before I go into that, I just want to make a commitment to Anime. I'm not sure, I haven't been to those sites, so I apologize, Anime, but I'm very, very, very committed to working with you. And I share, David, let's have a conversation about this. And let's also get to know each other a bit, because there's some surprising overlaps in some of our journeys. And I think we can find ways to get to know each other better and support each other better. And I'm very committed to doing that, Anime. And I appreciate your courage, and I appreciate your candor, and you have my support. And I will work harder to support you. I apologize if I haven't been there in ways that you had hoped for. But I want to talk about this because, you know, right now, there's Garden Hill, and I mentioned this before, which is a community that's got ACE Cooperative, which did geothermal zero energy. It can't do that anymore because the federal government won't allow the First Nations and their social enterprise to use the Manitoba Hydro pay-as-you-go system. The federal government subsidizes Kentucky Fried Chicken in those same communities, making it more difficult for the local chicken farm and co-op that they started to provide to fight diabetes and do that. We can take that fight on. The grassy narrow fights, the contamination of mercury, just not far from where I'm sitting, is a fight that goes on and on and on, and we could step in there. The issue of extracting silica sand that was mentioned in the question is being used for fracking natural gas, which we know has a carbon footprint bigger than coal.
Thank you. Next, Judy.
Hey, thank you. With respect to the specific issues that are happening within the prairies, one of the things that I'd really like to see is when we have the messaging coming from GPC during elections and prior to it, that it should be really about policy and allowing the individual EDAs or regions to determine what local issues apply to that policy so that they can really put a personal spin. This is a way of really connecting with your electorate on the ground. It's not something big and away from them. It's something that's in their backyard. And so it is a way for us to be able to reach out and connect on a local level, which is what really needs to happen, especially in rural areas of the prairies, because people want to know you, they want to know where you're from, and they want to know where you stand on the issues that are important to them. I would really like to see allowing the candidates to be able to target local specific issues that they're going to be able to use in a number of different ways. But it's, you know, we have to be really looking at what the people in that area need, what their pain points are, and then we need to be able to speak about our solutions in a way that solves their problems. And that's really where we're going to be building support across the prairies. Thank you.
Great. And I apologize for cutting out right there. Dimitri, have you gone yet? I believe you're next.
Yes, thank you. What's happening, I think, in respect of the CanWest sands mining project and the contamination of the aquifer is really an instance of a larger problem of corporate predations of our natural resources, and how we build national support for the people who are being affected by the CanWest sands mining project is to demonstrate, which I don't think is going to be challenging, that there are communities around this country that are being affected in this way by abusive behavior by the corporate sector. So for example, you have the Athabasca River being contaminated by the tar sands industry. You know, Glenn mentioned grassy narrows. There's the Nestle controversy that happened in Ontario. There's the contamination of waters off coast BC by oil spills by the fossil fuels industry. So what is happening locally is really a national and even an international phenomenon. And we as a party need to be drawing attention to the fact that we are all in this together, and that we are all ultimately being victimized by a business sector that is entirely focused upon profits over the interests of the people and the planet. So personally, I don't think it's going to be particularly challenging to build national support for those who are opposed to the CanWest project, as long as we focus on the fact that this is a global phenomenon, a national phenomenon, and not simply a local phenomenon.
Great, thank you so much. Next up, we have Amita. Would you like me to ask the question again?
No, I think I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I think when it comes to the sands mining project, it's exactly the type of thing that we should be fighting for and communicating about. Because having those examples that impact our communities at home is what shows people what our problems are and how we can actually take action, and brings us to the place where we get to connect to one another. And so those are the key to having regional messaging that's connected to national policy and vice versa. To get to a place where we're really thriving together starts at the local level. So we need to be able to address systemic issues and broken pieces. And this is a perfect example of that, where you can connect symptoms and causes, policy, and the lived experience and the true day-to-day lives and struggles of every person. And that's how you reach an entire country and manage to communicate a vision and solutions to everybody in a way that they really feel like they can get on board. Thank you.
And does anyone have any rebuttals? I realized I forgot to ask about rebuttals last time, and so I wanted to make sure we got that in this time. No? Next question then, uranium mining in Saskatchewan and the Green Party stance on nuclear power and how you would best articulate that. I'm going to shuffle the order this time as to who speaks first. And David Murner.
Thank you for the question. By coincidence, we actually have a session July 25th, this coming July 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern on the impacts of uranium radiation on our healthcare system. Anybody who wants to tune in can find the details at davidmurner.com under events. I really see this as a very important issue. Nuclear power has been one of those issues that kind of divides the Green Party. And the answer to me is always around, what does the science say? What does the evidence say? And let's weigh the evidence, weigh the science, and then come to an informed conclusion. And especially on things like nuclear power and the impacts of uranium on health, we need to look at the science, latest breaking science, and then come to balanced conclusions together. It's clear, the science is clear right now, that uranium presents serious health risks to Canadians. The nuclear power industry represents serious ongoing health risks to Canadians. And until we have a way of addressing those risks, this is an industry that needs to be watched very, very closely. And the expansion of that industry in Canada is very problematic. It's not only problematic because of the health risks, but also because of the cost and the delay in setting up nuclear. Renewable energy is far faster, far less expensive, far easier to bring online, and that's where we should be going as a country. Thank you.
Naomi, I believe you're on mute.
Thanks. I did want to quickly just interject. I think I forgot to say that this question came in from Richard Jack in Regina, Saskatchewan. Glenn, would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think there's huge problems with nuclear, the health issues that David pointed out, I agree with, and I thank him for his comments. We need a whole new analysis. We need a complete review of the actual costs and environmental health implications of all forms of energy. I know in Ontario what is actually represented as the cost of nuclear and what it is with all the embedded costs. The subsidies of fossil fuels go from $34 billion, if you read the World Bank reports, to $6 billion. This is where carbon pricing is important to level the playing field. Get rid of the subsidies, but we as Greens have to have a clear position on that. We need a legislative cap. We need a carbon budget. We need a cap decline rate, reducing our emissions by at least 8 to 10% per year now. Until we do that, the subsidies in nuclear and natural gas are going to render clean and renewable energy impossible. some folks are arguing that we should just continue with the carbon tax. It's not working. Our emissions are going up. It lacks the budget. You would, according to the IMF, the RAISE report, we'd have to increase our carbon tax to $75 today for it to even stall growth in emissions. We have to go into the next election with a coherent position on energy, carbon market mechanisms, and we have to create the pool of capital. Quebec and Ontario and Nova Scotia, we're approaching about 20% reductions. We have to get back and build the kinds of systems that are working. Otherwise, nuclear is going to be very hard to deal with because we're only having half the argument. If you look at the pricing system, it doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Miriam.
Okay, I am against nuclear power as we have much better alternatives that are significantly cleaner and more effective. And in terms of uranium mining, I find it that it is horrifying that we do this because of the local and the global impacts. So locally, the impacts are contamination, including radioactive dust, radon gas, waterborne toxins, and increased levels of background radiation. So for our own health, we should not mine it. And globally, 80% of Canadian uranium is exported. 76% goes to the US that then use it to create nuclear weapons. We cannot be a leader in peace and export one of the deadliest raw materials in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Amita.
Thank you. This is always an interesting question for me because I'm a physicist, so I have a pretty good understanding of nuclear technology. But what I see so far in Canada is that we do not have the opportunity to have safe nuclear power. And I'm interested in some of the technologies that are showing up, and I think we need to have nuanced conversations about the way kind of even the phrasing that we use around nuclear power in general. But given the lack of regulation, the fact that most of the companies that are in charge of nuclear projects are not trustworthy, and that we have huge problems with storage of nuclear waste near waterways, in Indigenous territory and near vulnerable communities, it's extremely problematic, and in no way could I support going forward with it, even as somebody who doesn't have a fundamental problem with some of the technology, though the older reactors are something I could never support anyway at this point. So I also don't think it's the solution, but I think we need to add some nuance to the way we communicate about it. And I'd be happy to, of course, add that in as a scientist. When it comes to uranium mining, I agree. It's really risky and dangerous, and any time that we're doing resource extraction or mining, we have to look at the regulations, how if it can be done sustainably and safely, and also be always looking at the sovereignty of the Indigenous people in the region. And when possible, we need to do this for every single renewable technology to make sure that we're not causing more problems. Thank you.
Perfect timing. And next, Dimitri.
I'm going to echo what my colleagues have said. I am opposed to nuclear energy. You know, it does, on a short-term basis, it can appear to have a reasonably good safety record, but what is often lost in the discussion when you hear from proponents of nuclear energy is that when there is a dangerous incident, it can have absolutely catastrophic consequences. And the costs are incalculable. And I think of Chernobyl, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. Furthermore, I don't believe that there is a proven method of safely storing nuclear waste on a long-term basis. And so I think we can all agree, certainly from the candidates we've heard this from tonight, that this is unduly dangerous and something that we cannot as a party support. But we also have to look at the other side of the equation. Why is there support for the nuclear industry amongst people in the prairies who work in this industry? Is because they need jobs. So we have to address that. If we want public support for a non-nuclear agenda, for a non-nuclear energy system, we have to address the need to replace those jobs. And I think one thing we should be talking about is the need to remediate land that has been contaminated by the extractive sector, and to invest the monies that are necessary to return those lands to a healthy state, and thereby create what would constitute a reclamation jobs boom. There is an enormous amount of employment available to be created through the restoration of our lands to a healthy state.
And next, Judy.
Boy, this is a tough one to follow everybody else, because I want to say ditto to everything that my colleagues have said. You know, one of the silver linings with COVID is that the Cigar Lake is actually shut down due to COVID-19. It's interesting that the history with uranium mining. I echo that we absolutely cannot be supporting nuclear at this point in time. The nuclear waste is just untenable. We do not have safe ways of storing it, and the risk for nuclear accidents are too high. I do support continuing research into the newer technologies. There is some interesting technology that I could see maybe 20, 30 years down the road, but it's certainly not going to be competitive with clean energy at this point in time. In the 1990s, the Saskatchewan government really looked at shutting down the uranium mining, and as was mentioned, they didn't because of the jobs involved, and they've been full speed ahead since then. So we do have to give alternatives for jobs, and the reclamation and cleaning is really good. But I think that it really speaks to a larger problem with any resource extraction, is that there is inevitably tailing ponds and waste, and it always seems to end up being environmental racism, where these are placed in areas with near First Nations communities or other you know, Indigenous communities or Black communities. And we really have to look at the larger problem there. Thank you.
And Andrew.
I too am against nuclear power. I was one of the people that the Green Party sent, the Green Party of Ontario sent to speak up against the expansion of the Chalk River project here near Ottawa. I know that the issue a lot of Greens have raised is that it is a cleaner form of energy than oil and gas, but it's also a more costly form of energy. Right now, solar panel is one of the most effective and most energy efficient and most cost efficient form of energy production. What we need to do is shift our resources from putting more money into, well, for here an example, in Ontario, retrofitting the Darlington nuclear plant, which, as we like to say, no nuclear plant production or no nuclear project in Ontario has ever come in on time or on budget. Transfer those costs into R&D for more renewable energy, specifically for storage, because a lot of the knock against green energy is its fact that it can't provide that base load. So we need to make sure that we have the battery capabilities and other mechanisms in place that we can provide that base load power. And one of the things that I would disagree with that Glenn has said is that the Green Party does have a plan for reducing carbon emissions, and that's our fee and dividend plan. It's a plan very similar to the British Columbia one, which does work.
And giving Emmy a chance for closing this time.
Thank you. So there's going to be a lot of agreement amongst Greens with respect to uranium mining and nuclear energy. I have a cousin who is a nuclear physicist. He's a professor of nuclear physics down in the States and is a big proponent of nuclear energy, but he acknowledges that unless we are doing an unprecedented investments in deep decarbonization with limitless funds, that it isn't really a short-term solution. So even beyond the other things that have been touched upon, its contribution to weapons proliferation, the difficulties in disposing of the waste, we really can't afford to, at this moment, to be investing any more into this technology as an option for decarbonization, which really has to be our priority. And so we also need to make sure that we're offering alternatives to the people who have come to depend on industries that we recognize don't have a future, and we should not be investing in or doubling down investments in. And this is the best opportunity that we will have for a very, very long time whenever we have the good fortune to move out of the pandemic towards economic recovery and stimulus to make those large-scale investments and begin those large-scale projects that are actually going to provide alternatives to these sorts of industries.
Thank you so much. So our next question that we have is from Lee Van Roon Jr. from Manitoba. So as a longtime member of the Winnipeg Labour Council, I would like to know what vision each candidate has for developing closer ties with members of the labor movement, and how specifically they would encourage labor and union members to work together for a more green, ecologically friendly, sustainable economy. So first, we are going to start with Andrew.
Sorry, first off, I'm getting comments that my mic is, the audio is choppy. Can everyone hear me okay?
So you are cutting out a little bit for me personally, in terms of the audio is not clear, but I am able to hear you.
Okay, so I was actually trying to see what I could do when you're actually asking that question. So
great. So I'll ask another person. I can come back to you at the end. So next up, we have David.
Thank you, Sai, and thank you, Lee, for the question. Excellent question. I did a master's in labor relations before going to law school, and labor relations was a big part of my early career at the Department of Justice in Ottawa. And one of the things that I found in that career is that whenever we could get people to the table together, we had a chance to talk about our underlying interests and figure out how can we solve these problems together. I set up an informal conflict management system. We brought in legislation. It was a huge team effort with Treasury Board officials, federal public service unions, Public Service Alliance of Canada, Department of National Defence employees. So I actually have quite a bit of experience in this area, and I think you're right. What we need is a Green Party to go into the next election with a very strong, clear labor agenda, including federal minimum wage, emphasizing the guaranteed livable income, and really emphasizing fairness in the workplace. I'm a real fan of workers on corporate boards for all federally regulated industries. Germany does this. It's very effective, and it's part of workplace democracy. And I think that also we need to look at changing the culture inside the federal government, a culture that has just far too much racism, harassment, and really difficult human rights situations internally, and we need to take a systematic approach. I'd say that in my remaining 10 seconds about the Green Party as well. Diversity needs to be a key focus of our leader, our next leader, and addressing the problems that we've seen on this call should be fundamental to what we do inside our party as well. Thank you.
Great. Next, we have up Miriam. Miriam?
Yes.
Oh,
so this is really important. The labor movement is going to be an essential ally for a just transition and a Green New Deal. And there are other green parties around the world who have managed to create bonds and ties, like, for example, the Australian Greens that have the electrical trades and construction, forestry and mining workers unions as their closest allies. And because it is the only party that talks about a just transition that includes a federal jobs guarantee, free post-secondary education, and a guaranteed livable income. Basically, it's all the tools to make sure that workers from the fossil fuel sector are looked after. We need to make them understand that we are a natural ally and that the outcome of phasing out of fossil fuels will be beneficial for them. And as a leader, I would also encourage the Green Party of Canada staff to unionize. So we are in line with the global green values. We need to lead by example.
Great. Next, we'll have Dimitri.
This is a matter that's very close to me personally. My parents came here in the 50s as immigrants with no high school education from a war-torn country, Greece. They started to amass enough money to start a family business by working at a McCormick's factory in London, Ontario. I put myself through university by doing minimum wage jobs and emerged with a considerable amount of debt. I care very deeply about the plight of workers, and I'm very conscious of the fact that there's a perception that the Green Party of Canada has not done enough for workers, and I believe we have ceded to the NDP the role of being the champion of organized labor. So I put forward a workers' rights platform, which you can find on my website, teamdimitri.ca, which goes far beyond anything that the NDP or any party has done to advocate for the rights of workers. I want to see a maximum spread between executive compensation and worker compensation of 10-to-1. I want to see a law outlawing the use of replacement workers during strikes and during lockouts. I want to see a national commission put together to educate workers and also to provide financing to workers for the formation of worker cooperatives. We need to democratize the workplace. I think what we as a party need to do is to actually become the champion of labor in this country. And if we can do that, we can very quickly, swiftly, and convincingly supplant the NDP as the supposed champion of workers when they have long since actually played that role.
Great. Next up, we have Judy. Judy?
Yep, thank you. Yes, I absolutely think that we have to be positioning ourselves as allies with the unions, working on a foundation of fairness and equity. You know, when we talk to people about our transition for you know, Mission Possible, they're afraid. They're afraid of losing their job and their security. You know, so that's really, really important that we address that fear, and so that people understand that what we're proposing will actually equate to better jobs for them, longer term jobs, and with or better income for those jobs. You know, with retrofitting the federal buildings to net zero, there's going to be a lot of jobs there. Cleaning up tailings ponds and abandoned oil wells, lots of jobs there as well. But I think that we need to be looking at some innovative ways of structuring businesses, like employee-owned businesses and profit sharing, and encouraging more partnerships with employees and business owners, rather than an adversarial circumstance, which I see far too often, that you know, you're all in it together to make your company profitable and for you all to be paid a decent wage. And that includes this trend to not have you know, having part-time workers only. You need full-time so that they have benefits. We need to really be championing that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Andrew. Are you available now?
Yeah, so I just want to say a thing about my audio first. I'm not sure what's causing the choppiness. My only solution is I brought a little MP3 recorder here. So I'm recording this now. So if this is going to go on the internet and someone, if you feel that you wanted to hear my answer better and it wasn't there, I'm recording it myself so I can actually just possibly maybe work with the organizers here and edit it over top.
Great.
Okay. So I want to say before anything else that I'm 100% pro-worker. The Green Party has advocated for the workers on so many different levels, be it for having a livable wage, not a minimum wage, a livable wage, making sure we have proper working conditions, making sure that worker rights are protected. So I am 100% in favor of all of that. And I personally think that the best way to go about doing that is through legislation. We can pass positive legislation on a federal level to help protect more workers, because the fact of the matter is there's a lot of precarious workers who work in all across Canada in all industries, as well as part-time workers that don't have the protection of unions, and that's the union's choice, not theirs. So we need more legislative protection. If we truly care about workers, this is the best way to go about doing it. And this is another issue where I hope this doesn't come across as the wrong way, but I'm probably the only one who's going to have the honest conversation about saying this. Unions are very strong in industries that we need to start phasing away from, like nuclear power. They're protecting nuclear power and the tar sands.
I apologize. We're out of time right now, so we're going to have to move on.
Was that? Did I take up my time talking about my microphone thing?
Yes. I mean, to be honest, most of us can't hear you anyway. You cut out for a good 15 seconds.
Oh, are you kidding me? I apologize, people. I am recording it, so if you really want to hear this, let me know. I got it.
Great. Thank you. So next up, we're going to have Naomi.
Well, some of my earliest memories were with my mother, who was a proud union member for most of her life in Canada. And what I remember most is that it was very empowering to be on marches with her, to be with her as she helped to organize. And I mostly also took away from it the things that unions did that made a difference for everyone, not just for the people within the union. And we all have a lot to thank unions for in terms of the kind of employment guarantees and living standards and social benefits that we all enjoy as people in, well, not all of us, but that many of us enjoy as people in Canada. And so I mean, to actually, Andrew makes a point that I think is very important, which is that unfortunately, organized labor has been put in more and more conflict between wanting to do what is right with respect to the climate emergency, with respect to their responsibility to people in Canada, and you know, being good global citizens and work for the workers that they represent. And so we need to make sure that we are resolving that conflict through resolution and through creating jobs and industries that have a sustainable future that is coherent with combating the climate emergency.
Thank you so much, Naomi. So next we're going to move on to Glenn.
Yeah, so a few things. One, I've worked with labor. I worked with Jerry Dias and Unifor and steelworkers and many others who represent people in the oil, gas, and resource extraction industries. I worked with them and the corporations to get a commitment to our goals consistent with ours, where we had a system in place, a series of mandates and systems where we were achieving 4.3% reductions per year. That was unprecedented. I don't know how we're going to do this. We have a lot of policies as Greens, but we have to actually have practical plans. So if there aren't market mechanisms in place, and there aren't carbon budgets, and there aren't systems in which companies can use to pool capital to adapt technology, if you don't have pools of capital to pay for just transition, I don't know how we're going to do this. And so I've argued a lot of specifics in this area. I mean, some simple things like writing just transition into our labor legislation and environmental legislation, setting up mandates. You know, when coal plants are closed, they cost about $120 a ton in reduction. It actually shows up as a carbon price. If you do what Ontario did, that had no carbon pricing system in place, that goes on to the rate base. Can I just finish one sentence? I'll give up time later on, but I'm finding it very frustrating not being able to get a complete idea out. $120 a ton is a pretty steep carbon price. If you don't, but if we had a pricing system, that would have been paid for by others, by investors, not by ratepayers. And we as Greens have to get more serious about how we're going to work with labor and how we're going to work with corporations. We just can't throw out these big statements that sound lovely, but don't have any capacity to implement.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Amita, you're next.
Thank you. I think working with the labor movement is super important. And to me, labor and organized labor itself is an example of participatory democracy. It's how we've gotten our rights and how we must continue. As a union member, as a grad student, it's the only way that we got anywhere close. Honestly, we didn't get there. We did not get anywhere near a living wage, but we got somewhere close to having increased access to healthcare as well. And so it's absolutely necessary that we grow this connection and we enshrine workers' rights. We push against the systems of control towards democratization. And that means also working with unions to deal with their own authoritarian issues. And it's really important that we support workers and not industries. Connecting to labor will help us determine how well we can actually have our transition, because we need to advocate as one, not be opposed to each other. And I see this also especially important, not just in the climate conversation, but also with the developments of artificial intelligence and automation. So it is an absolutely necessary connection that we need to grow and will give us our greatest strength.
Thank you so much, Amita. I apologize. I actually want to give Andrew a minute to finish up his statement. On my end, I'm not able to hear it, but I'll just let it run for a minute because I think some of our members are able to hear him. So Andrew, would you be able to speak?
I've been playing around with my microphone this whole time. Can you hear me at all now?
So I'm having a different hearing experience than other people, but I believe other people can hear you. They're writing in the chat.
I know, but I actually just changed my microphone. So can people take a second? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
it's still choppy.
They can hear you, but it's choppy. Yeah.
Okay. I'm turning off my video. Hopefully that helps a little bit. What I was saying was we need to have an honest conversation about how we interact with unions and energy in this country. They're big proponents of keeping the form of energy in place that is hurting our planet. And we need to start to work and find a way that we can protect our workers, which is one of the most important things. Make sure we have good green jobs in the green economy, which is the fastest growing industry in the world, but do it in a way that protects workers, and but we're not held hostage to not being able to get things done because we have to deal with people who are putting up walls preventing this to happen. It may sound like it's a difficult thing to do, but again, we need to have this honest conversation. And I think the best way to do it is to make sure that we have policies in place and legislation in mind to protect our workers and our planet.
Great, thank you so much, Andrew. I actually wanted to give some time for Dimitri to have a rebuttal. So we have 90 seconds on for a rebuttal. Dimitri? Hello?
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by Glenn's comments about Jerry Diaz, because Jerry Diaz to me exemplifies everything that is wrong with the labor movement. Jerry Diaz had a fit when the NDP in the Alberta, the convention that was held in Alberta, simply contemplated the possibility of having a discussion about the LEAP manifesto. Jerry Diaz was cozying up to Justin Trudeau last year in the election, despite the fact that Trudeau had purchased the Trans Mountain Pipeline and had betrayed his promise to end fossil fuel subsidies, which are literally throwing gas on the climate fire. And I think it's very important for us to understand that there are problematic leaders within the labor movement, like Jerry Diaz. These are not the people, they are not our allies. We shouldn't see them as such, but that the workers themselves are fundamentally in favor of a just transition in order to a clean and renewable energy economy. The problem that we have is that we haven't convinced them that they're not going to be left behind in that transition. If we do that, then we'll quickly be able to dispense with the Jerry Diaz's of this world.
Thank you, Dimitri. Now, I believe that Judy is up next. Judy, do you have anything to say?
I've already spoken about labor. Yeah, that's okay.
I apologize. Sorry, I messaged in the chat. My bad.
Okay. I can keep talking.
Okay. Well, Naomi, then it's back to you.
The next question is from Judy Mergel in southern Saskatchewan, Athabasca riding. And she is wondering what you would do to support farmers experimenting with low input practices and to bring agriculture issues more to the national stage. And shuffling the order again, Glenn.
There's a number of challenges. One, we have to start taking measures to protect the family farm, including agriculture, but more broadly, since we're on the prairies, there's amazing work being done by the Institute for Local Self-Reliance out of the University of Minnesota on how to restore locally owned economies, be it stores or farms. When we buy from a local farm or we buy from a local shop that's locally owned, 80% of the capital that we spend, the money we spend, stays in the community. When you buy from a chain, 80% of that money leaves your community. Localizing farm as localizing the urban economy is important. We have to take control of research back from the corporate sector. Right now, pharmaceutical companies, seed companies, pesticide companies fund most of the research. We've abandoned public sector research and innovation. When I was Minister of Research and Innovation, we started major farm supports. We introduced things like Clean Cow, which takes the ruminant and greenhouse gas emissions out of cows. It's an amazing technology. But we've got to support locally owned farms. We've got to protect farms. We've got to have a local province, and we've got to treat in tax and in our public policies. We've got to differentiate between locally owned family farms, and quite frankly, we should look to the amazing work that's being done on homegrown economies and that came mostly out of rural North America. Thanks.
And Amita?
Thank you. I'll start by saying that this issue is real for me in the sense that I live on an off-grid island, and food security and food growing is top of mind for all of us here. And I think really the only way forward for us to have a world where we can live, be fed, is through sustainable agriculture. And it's the only way through resilience and food security, and to make sure that we really are supporting local transitions and making sure that we have the supports in place for farmers and workers so they have the room to experiment with farming practices and actually move over to sustainability. This largely means stopping subsidizing factory farming and subsidizing local farmers instead. But it definitely goes beyond that into the conversation about community. And I'm really glad, Glenn, that you raised that point, because when I was Science and Innovation Critic, I was looking a lot at science and research funding, and it's so true. There's a lot of work to be done here, and getting it out of corporate control, especially in food and agriculture, is a really important thing to do. We have some really great programs across the country we can support. Thanks.
And Miriam.
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, part of the Green New Deal that I'm proposing involves federal support for farmers to transitioning away from resource-intensive farming practices to environmentally sustainable farming. And the Green New Deal would also support farmers who are already practicing low-input sustainable agriculture via free education and a universal basic income, to help maintain and expand such practice. Thank you.
Judy.
Yes, food security is something that's near and dear to my heart as well. There's a number of things that are happening, and is that we have moved away from family farms. We need to move back to family farms, which means that young people need to have access to farmland. So I would like to see farmland trust, really supporting local family farms. You can do that through guaranteed livable income, so they're not having to drive the school bus while they're trying to farm. We need to attract more young people. The stats are showing that of the young people being attracted to farming now, there's a higher percentage of women than ever before. So that's a really growing demographic. We want to focus on local, organic, regenerative, mixed animal ag. Want to phase out the confined animal feeding operations, both on land and in water. Move away from industrial grown food crops, ensuring that food crops are grown locally. You can even look at doing mobile abattoirs. COVID-19 has shown us how very fragile our food distribution system is, even in our food processing, when we have the meat being processed in only 2 or 3 large facilities. When they were shut down, that put a lot of strain on our food distribution system. So it's really critical that we go back to being, and I say go forward, bringing the best of the past forward in terms of being resilient with our food security. Thank you.
And Dimitri.
I think that the pandemic and all that has come to the fore in the pandemic has created an extraordinary opportunity for us. We've seen through the disruption of global supply chains, not only their complexity, but also their fragility, that it is more important than ever. I think people understand this to an unprecedented degree, that the things that are necessary to the well-being and the health of Canadians be locally produced and be available and not subject to these disruptions and these types of crises, whether they're a health crisis, whether it's a geopolitical crisis, whether it is an economic crisis. And so I think now we have an opportunity as a country to invest massively and to have the necessary support from the public to invest massively in local production of essential foodstuffs. And that means, amongst other things, promoting through public investment family farms. And we know that the money is there now because the government has summoned up $200 billion plus in the space of several months in order to avoid the worst effects of a pandemic, an unprecedented public health emergency, and the economic crisis that has flowed from that. The public is no longer buying the claim that the money just isn't there. We know that we have the means to invest publicly in things that are so essential to our well-being, such as local production of agricultural products that are necessary to our health and well-being. This is our moment. I think we need to seize it and take what is good from this crisis.
And Andrew.
So farmers are a key ally in our fight against climate change. Then they need the incentives to be able to help us in that fight, be able to plant more crops that absorb carbon and more trees that absorb carbon. Right now, Manitoba has more farmers under the age of 35, I believe, than the rest of the country. But on average, most of them are over 50, and they're retiring. So we need to find new ways to bring in new people to the farming industry. And it's very difficult to do that. Most of the incentives in place are meant for large factory farms. It's extremely difficult for a young couple or a young family to start a family farm. Just the fact of getting a mortgage for a farm is extremely difficult. So unless you inherit a farm, you're kind of out of luck, and we can't do that. We also need to make sure that more farming areas have high-speed internet, because farms are able to use high-speed internet to operate their equipment, and they're also use GPSs to make sure that pesticides aren't wasted in the more concentrated use. We also need to keep a food security plan, and that means more than just having our guaranteed livable income. We need to find a way to have food security in all regions across Canada, especially in our northern part. So agriculture is an extremely important thing. I wish the Green Party, under my leadership, the Green Party would put far more focus on agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you. Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi. Indeed, farmers have a very important role to play in a number of things that are in urgent need of fixing. Certainly, the Green Party has been talking for a very long time about biodiversity and the lack of biodiversity. We've also, as we've seen throughout the pandemic, really come face to face with the reckless decisions that our various levels of government have taken that have put us in a very, very dangerous situation where some parts of our country only have enough food for a couple of days or less if the supply chains are cut off for any reason. And so it's, in terms of the federal government, one of the main responsibilities of a federal government is to ensure the security of the people within its territory. And in that regard, it's absolutely failing. We do need to talk about concrete steps. And so we have put out a strategy that is built upon Green Party policies with respect to rural revitalization. We have a number of people from rural communities and farmers who have contributed to that document. My family actually, they were farmers. They came from small farming communities, very rural. And so this is something that I understand that it goes beyond economics. It's also culture, it's also tradition. We need to be using the opportunity of the massive investments we're going to be making over the next couple of years to make these kind of structural changes that can support the kind of farming future that we're seeking in this country.
And in closing, David.
Thank you. I come from a farming family, farmed west of Wetaskiwin, Alberta, and I live in a rural-urban riding here in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke on the south end of Vancouver Island. And I do think this is a critical issue for the Green Party to win on. We need to be able to go out to farmers with a clear plan on how we're going to help farmers. We need to shift how we subsidize agriculture in Canada. We need to move away from massive, large-scale farming and into family farms, into family-scale farming. That's what's happening here on South Vancouver Island. The big challenge, as Judy and Andrew have both mentioned, is enabling young farmers to get into the farming community. They're not able to afford land here. I was on the Land Conservancy Board. We sponsored, through a farm land trust, Madrona Farms. That's one solution. I'd also say that we need to think about how we move off dairy and milk as consumers. This is a key issue for us. It's politically sensitive, but for the environment, it's also really critical for us to look at our diet and how that ties into the shift in priorities in the agriculture sector. Thank you.
Great. Now, I wanted to thank everybody for asking questions, submitting them ahead of time so that way we could get responses. So now we're going to finish off with some of our closing statements. Each one is going to be about 30 seconds. So first, we're going to start with Amita.
Thank you. Well, this has been an interesting and lovely conversation after all, but still tough. We really do have a wonderful opportunity to grow as a party. And from my own experiences, I know politics is not always a welcoming place, but on our campaign, it has been truly full of joy. We are the party to build a movement that will unite this country and bring our collective dreams into reality. We're excited and invite you to join us in building this movement. Please visit my website, amitacutner.ca, to connect or to join the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is David.
Thank you. Time is short. We're facing a global climate emergency. We're facing racism, which we experienced on this call today. We're facing huge challenges, and it's time for a Green Party that is socially progressive, fully diverse, takes on racism, takes on the climate emergency. And to do that, we need a leader who can win seats in both official languages, from Quebec all the way through to New Brunswick, Eastern Ontario, coast to coast to coast. That's what I offer. If you want more information, davidmurner.com, and click on volunteer, or especially donate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next is Mariam.
So thank you to the Green Party of Canada and Vicky for the work you have done to organize this. And thank you to Naomi and Sai for moderating. We had a rocky start, and thank you for the support in the chat box and from my colleagues. We need to fight systemic racism and systemic oppression together. You may have seen from my mean tweets video, these sorts of comments are unfortunately something some face every day. And I would like to thank my amazing team who take a lot of the work so I don't have to. And also Amita, Dimitri, and David, who always check in when something happens. We need to change. We need to become cool and engage new young voters. We need to become the most progressive voice in the country and create an economy where we care for the planet and we care for each other. We need to fight for a Green New Deal. Join my team, join the movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dimitri.
Let's not forget that really Saskatchewan and CCF is where national public health care was born in this country, which is one of the greatest accomplishments of this nation. And it embodies the spirit, national public health care, of progressivism, which Mariam talked about so passionately just a moment ago. That is the path forward for our party. Be the champion of progressive voices, to go boldly where no party is willing to go today, and speak to the hearts and minds of Canadians. And if we do that, we will take this party to the next level. I, as a class actions lawyer, know that that is going to encounter fierce corporate resistance, and I have a record of demonstrating that I can overcome that resistance. I invite you to check out my background and my platform on teamdimitri.ca, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. Next, we have Andrew.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I know that there is some audio trouble, and you may have audio trouble hearing this now. If so, please get in touch with me, andrewwest.ca. This is an opportunity for you to get to know more about me, and I can repeat some of my answers. I have them recorded here. What we need to do is get a leader who will get us elected, and I am that leader. I have been a long-time Green. I know what it takes from the inside to make the Green Party successful. I can relate to people, and I know what it means to be a Green. The best thing that we can do is keep the party in the center, so we can attract the biggest amount of voters possible. To conquer our climate emergency, we need all hands on deck, and we need a vision and a leader who will make sure that we get everyone we can on board so we can form government, pass our amazing policies, and start doing good things for Canada. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Next, we have Naomi.
Thank you very much for the opportunity this evening to be with you and to talk about some of the things that, as I said, have affected my family in a very particular way. We have the opportunity to demonstrate to people across the country that we care in a very concrete way. We care enough to have thought about and developed a full plan for how we are going to not only tackle the climate emergency, which is an existential threat that will impact us all, but also how we'll be able to do it in a way that leaves everyone better off and leaves no one behind. And this is the message. We have an opportunity to communicate that message in a way that we maybe never have before. It's our job to do it because we need more green voices at the table at this critical moment when decisions that we have to live with for a very long time are going to be taken. I'm really looking forward to working with Greens across the country to do that, and I encourage you all to get to know us in our campaign more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Next, we have Judy.
Hi, thank you so much, Vicki, for organizing this, Sai and Naomi for leading us so well through all of this. I just want to speak out again in support for Miriam Anami, and I know Amita as well, has had absolutely unacceptable trolling behavior on social media. I really want to encourage all of us to speak out if we see that. I'm sorry, Enemy, I haven't seen the ones that you were referring to because I guarantee I would have spoken out in that case. But what I do want to say is that we all, we all have the same core green principles. We have so much the same driving us in this race, and yet I think all of us are working hard to show how we differentiate each other from each other, and that we have all of these different collective ideas going forward. I am so looking forward to being in Parliament with each and every one of you. I see us all being elected and really swelling our caucus to be official party status for the next election. It's really important that we continue to work together moving forward, that we overcome all of this craziness that is COVID and campaigning and everything that we're all going on with. But, we are all in this together. We are all Green Party members. Our hearts are greener than they are red, and we just need to pull together. I am Judy Greene. I'm the only Atlantic Canadian in the competition. And I invite you to join, check out my website, judyngreen.com, and click on the nominate, click on the donate, and I'd love to have you on my team. We have a team that comes from all three coasts. Thank you.
Yep. Next, we have Glenn.
Thanks, everyone who put this together. We have not a lot of time. We have less than a decade to start dramatically capping and bringing down greenhouse gas emissions. In Canada, that means we're going to have to work with industry. I work in a small clean tech sector with very enthusiastic business leaders who want to see this happen. I've been in labor. I grew up in Quebec, in Montreal, in Ontario. I've worked with labor. I've been a union member. I've worked on building effective policy frameworks and partnerships to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We as Greens have an abundance of policy. What we're lacking is the solid plans to implement them. And when we're talking about your job, your family, your business, and your livelihood, we've got to be a party of pragmatists, and that's what I bring to the Green Party. If you want more information, please go to glenmarie.ca. Thank you to all my colleagues. I'm very proud to be associated with these leadership candidates. They're a wonderful group of people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And lastly, I wanted to actually ask Vicki, would we be able to get up the recorded video message from Dr. Howard?
Yes, she sent in a video. For those of you who weren't there at the very start, she's not able to join us tonight, but I will play the video right now. One moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Courtney Howard. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today. I'm halfway to my emergency shift here in Yellowknife. This is Chief Dry Geese territory. One of the ground zeros of climate change. We're already 2.5 degrees Celsius warmer here than we were when an 80-year-old elder was born, and I serve patients extending up to the high Arctic where it's already 3 degrees Celsius warmer. So that's why I've spent the last decade of my life learning about the evidence around climate change, doing research on wildfires, and really becoming an expert both nationally and internationally at the intersection of evidence and climate policy. I'm putting together an evidence-based platform focused on health and a well-being economy that I think will be groundbreaking in terms of its ability to not only have health in all policies, but to have planetary health in all policies. And I think a focus on health is how the Green Party can speak to Canadians at this moment of immense vulnerability. We're getting the conversation started on a series of webinars this week. It's how to be a good influence with the Green Party's own Dimitri Lascaris, as well as Inges Wong of Some of Us, and Reagan Boychuk to help us figure out how to make healthy local environments from some of these really abandoned oil and gas wells that are endangering the environment. So let's put people back to work. Let's create a healthy future. Looking forward to doing that with you as the next leader of the Green Party of Canada.
Thank you so much, everyone. Huge thanks to Sai and to Naomi for your wonderful work moderating there. And thanks again to all the contestants for your thoughts and for being with us tonight. For those of you who felt like you didn't quite hear enough, there are a couple more of these events coming up. On Thursday, there will be an Atlantic Fork one. And I'm just going to plug my audio headphones back in here. One moment. Next event is on Thursday at 7 to 8:30 Atlantic time. We have MP Jenica Atwin and PEI Leader of the Official Opposition, Peter Bevan Baker, will be moderating that one. So please feel free to join us at any of these. You can also go to greenparty.ca/leadership-contest to find the links to everyone's websites, their social media, and their, of course, donate pages. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind a bit of support there. Thanks again, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.